Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals. I'm usefully welcome. I find it interesting that all this talk by Israel about the hostages, and and of course it is a travesty that these hostages were taken and a lot of them ended up dead. But one caveat, of course, is that a number of the hostages were killed by Israeli attacks, and now this demand by Israel that these bodies be turned over, and that Hamas and Gaza and the Palestinians are not doing enough to turn over the bodies of hostages. And let's remember that's quite a task considering Israel is bombed Gaza into obliteration. And so the idea that these bodies are going to be turned up easily is not necessarily Palestinian negligence. It has to do with the fact that Israel has destroyed an entire so-called country. But one of the things I found interesting is that all the emphasis on hostages, and of course, first of all, Israel stated that the operations by the Israeli army in Gaza would continue until the hostages got turned over, and then they would discuss any ceasefire. And that was just a lip service because, as we've seen, the hostages were turned over, and Israel continues its actions against Gaza. But more importantly, what I find interesting is that the hostages that Israel holds, they have over 11,000 prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, in their system, and we've heard lots of reports and now videos have surfaced of a lot of these Palestinians being tortured and even raped in prison. And I know there's a fair amount of people out there that feel like Hamas has been particularly brutal and that anything that happens to Palestinians in prisons in Israel is justified. And I would debate that because a lot of the Palestinians that are in Israeli prisons don't necessarily have any connections with Hamas. And the fact that there's this amount of torture and mutilation and rapes going on in Israeli prisons is just more war crimes committed by Israel. And in fact, 150 bodies were returned to Palestine in exchange under these terms of the ceasefire. And some of them were so mutilated that even their own families couldn't identify them. And then a lot of them were also missing organs. And we've heard about this before about Israel harvesting organs from Palestinians, and they probably harvest them from both living and dead Palestinians. But that's definitely a war crime, and it's just horrifying. And eyes and corneas have been missing. A lot of organs throughout the body have been missing from these bodies turned over. And a lot of the bodies you could tell were crushed under tanks, were shot at close range, and a lot of them just unable to be recognized. And Israel still holds 730 plus Palestinian corpses. So once again, I see this double standard. Israel demands that all their hostages, dead and alive, get turned over to Israel, and yet we have Israel holding 11,000 prisoners and 730 plus corpses that they don't want to hand over, including 67 children. So once again, the standards that Israel expects and the standards that Israel gives are definitely two different things, and that goes along with the fact that uh, on paper, something over 1,000 Israelis were killed during the October 7th attack, and Israel decided that in retribution they would kill 70,000 Palestinians. So, as always, very disproportionate in the brutality of the Israeli government, and the IDF is fully documented. So I just wanted to point that out. Israel doesn't have any room to complain about how their hostages in Gaza were treated. And in fact, there's not too many reports, even with the hostages being released. They oftentimes didn't have the best conditions as far as being sanitary and hygiene and being able to take showers. And obviously, a lot of them weren't fed very well. but who could expect them to be fed when Palestinians are hardly getting any food themselves? But I didn't hear anything about hostages in Gaza having their organs removed, being mutilated, and being raped. So just a horrifying episode, and the whole scenario in Israel and Gaza is just numbs the senses. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too?